brand new automation tool, Katalon Studio live training. We are into day 2 demo session. So we just had, okay, some logistic issues like, Vasanthi, can you hear us? Okay, probably I'll just reply to her. Uh, yeah, apologies for that. So yeah, so we just had one, orientation session followed by day 1 demo session. So did all of you get a chance to look at those 2 videos, understand the basic, what is this tool studio is all about? Okay, so I would strongly encourage to watch that from our website. So we have a orientation session followed by day 1 session. But since no, it's definitely not a repeated class. We are getting into the day 2 demo session, but at the same time, I'll just bring up to the speed onto the people who did not attend that. I cannot really cut short all that and cover it in 10-15 minutes. I would strongly encourage to go and watch those videos. But today's agenda mainly is like to understand how do we download and install the Katalon Studio, more like getting into the practical parts of it. And how do you activate your Katalon Studio with your account? Then we'll start with the web automation. First is the web test. So we'll start creating a web automation project. And then we'll see what are the different ways in which we can create a test that is either by recording, manually writing. So and then these are the 2 main things, but we can mix and match as we need it. And then we'll look at the manual and script mode. So in which how do you write manually? How do you generate the script in the Java Groovy format? So there's around a lot of questions on the language. So I've been insisting if you already know Java, then there is it's easy for you because the syntax you can start using typing it in the Java itself, and it will convert into the required format by its own. The otherwise it will mainly uses a language called Groovy. So but anyway, compared to the tools that we have like Selenium, you're not going to write that extensive programming as such because from the introduction, you all clearly understood that it is one of the best combination of major features from a tool called UFT, Unified Functional Testing Tool, or you might have heard about QTP. This is almost ruled the market for about a decade, from 2006 to 2016, or at least 15, I would say. And then we had Selenium, which is another open source tool in which you can do only web test automation. But the advantage is like we can do it for any web application, and as well as we can do it on a cross platform, cross browsers. So some of the great advantages of the Selenium tool. The only challenge there is bit of programming. You have to be master in like Java, at least in the basics of Java, in order to write an effective program. So what Katalon brings us is the great GUI features from the QTP or UFT and the complete library of Selenium, the way we have automated and the way we are going to create data-driven framework, keyword-driven framework, page object model, all that along with the strong Java foundations. It's just a combination of these 2. In simple term, if I have to define what is Katalon Studio, it's the combination of these 2 powerful tools. So as we go learn on a web test, you'll easily understand, but it's not just about that. It's not just about web test. Again, as I discussed in the introduction, it's not only familiar for web test, but the other area where we have today, most of the testing happens is on the mobile testing. So again, anybody familiar with Appium? So that was the open source for mobile automation testing. Now even Katalon has that features as well. So we can do a good amount of mobile applications testing. And it's again not just that. The other area where we have major amount of automation is going on, or major amount of manual efforts are going on, is the web services. Because today most of the applications are in the services category, services world, or services oriented architecture. Whatever the features that you develop, probably you'll develop it as a service, and some of the services may be consumed by others in a free of cost, and some of them will be consumed by a commercial way. But web services is another major area where we are investing a lot of time as a test engineers, automating it or validating it. So that is another key area which is part of the Katalon. Apart from that, the industry expectations is that we need to have our scripts continuously executing it. Like, we don't really need to run it manually on the need basis, but it should be part of their daily pipelines or weekly pipelines or every fortnight or every month, depending on the pipeline mechanism that your company has. Along with the developer's code, whenever the code gets built in, they run unit test scripts. And post unit test scripts, we need to run our regression scripts. So if you wanted to run these regression scripts in an automated way, first of all, you need to maintain these programs in a proper structured way, the automation scripts in a structured way. So that structure brings us by the Katalon. We can create all the scripts in the form of a page object model where we maintain all the objects information that we're going to talk about today. All the scripts, we're going to maintain it in a page-wise structure. If at all you know Selenium, we would have already understood there what is the advantage of page object model. So I keep referring these names just for the sake of the people who know it. People who don't know about QTP or UFT Selenium, you can just ignore, because we're going to look at Katalon Studio from the anyway from the scratch. But just that in case somebody know, I'll keep referring them so that they can relate it and understand it very easily. That's all. So we're going to look at we're going to maintain a clear structure for the program so that all the artifacts are maintained. And there is a clear way to maintain our test data that is required, be it in the form of an Excel file, CSV file. So all that we are going to maintain it in the relative path, so that when you load the test, all these will be automatically available to your test. And the biggest advantage that we're going to get is by integrating with a tool called Jenkins. So which is a continuous integration tool, and which is itself is popular on its own. So towards the end of it, we'll understand Jenkins as a tool, and then we'll see how we can integrate the Katalon with Jenkins, basically for continuous execution. And while doing this execution, if at all you find a defect, maybe in your regression, you can even connect it with JIRA and you can automatically log bugs, all that. So all this we were trying to do in the form of Selenium or in the form of qtp UFT, not directly Jenkins, but QTP had its own tool called HPALM from its own company, where we maintain all the user stories, test cases, defects, defect reporting and everything. But since those two were from the same company, HP, and initially they were from Mercury Interactive, it had its own plugin. And if you just take care of the plugin, you had that integration possible. But in case of Selenium, which was an open source, and all these are open source, Appium is an open source, Jira is a commercial tool, but it's a recursive license, like yearly basis, monthly basis, you can renew it. Jenkins is an open source. And we had for this project structure maintenance, we had something called Maven, which is again an open source from Apache. We used to integrate with that. And to do the data-driven test, we used to use Apache libraries, to read the data from Excel, write the data back into Excel. So all this was possible, but not as a single tool. The biggest challenge that I have seen people struggling while learning is that, first of all, understanding the Selenium tool itself, then learning about if it is mobile testing or Appium, then learning Maven and integrating with that, Jira integrating with that, Jenkins integration with that, and then understanding the page object model as a separate structure and trying to create your tests, all that were individual pieces, and there's so much of a learning curve. Now putting together again, very few people, only who can really write a good programming could create all this in a successful way. Now all that in a nice user-friendly UI, the graphical user interface, you can simply achieve without really writing much programming. And if at all you don't know QTP, the similar UI structure, you will feel it, and it's so user-friendly to create all these great features from the open source. So they just simply combined all the hard facts in the market today with respect to the testing, and they have really kept in the mind who is a beginner, who is not really uh, much into programming, who do not have really much programming idea. They can actually start using this tool. And if you have some idea, you can definitely do more wonders, because since anyway you can play around with the code, and you can add more validations, and you can add more checkpoints, etc. But at the short time, if somebody, because it's anyway short time, we are all into agile and we have to complete the automation in a very quick way within the 2 weeks of sprint, to an extent of at least the basic automation that we wanted to do, so that we will leverage it for the regression in the same release, maybe in the same release or for the upcoming releases. So in a quick short of time, how can you automate without really spending too much time in writing the code? So that's the biggest advantage of this tool. Okay, so the same thing elaborated more in detail in my orientation session and followed by day one. So just before erasing it, I want to quickly spend 2 minutes if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we'll get into today's day two agenda. We'll talk about how do we install the software, how do we activate your account, etc. So quick 2 minutes of pause. Anybody has any questions? It's already gaining popularity. Like people started using a lot. Just because we rolled out one orientation and day one, we have already, a lot of corporates have coming to us and asking for, is there any corporate training that you guys can provide on that? So people are using it, and I'll show you the forum uh, where the lot of discussions are also happening from the corporates in terms of if there are any issues. So that itself is another sign where people started using it. Okay, so there's a question on when will you show API testing? So definitely, first focus is on web testing. Soon after the web testing, we'll switch to web services testing. Then towards the end is on mobile testing. Sounds good? In a way, to answer your questions precisely, like 3 weeks from now, we'll have web testing. If you have something urgent, just let me know. We can sync up and I'll show you how you can do the web services testing. KMS not providing corporate training. KMS provides corporate training, but do expect, obviously it's it's the same company, and, they would have, probably they may charge a bit high. I don't know. But yeah, just as we rolled out our orientation and day one, people have reached to us. All right. So any other questions that we have at the moment? Cool. Otherwise, let's get into the today's agenda. Let's talk more about from where we can install. So by now, in case if somebody has already attended the previous sessions, I just showed like from where you can download it. But if not, it's simple. Just go to katalon.com. So it is a main website, and as somebody was saying, KMS is a technology or a company who developed this. So you can simply download it from here, and once you download it, depending on whether you can actually use it for Windows, you can use it for, yeah, KMS is a company. So you can use it for Windows, you can use it for Mac, and you can install. Most of the test servers generally would be on Linux. At least in my case, we have a lot of Linux servers. So In case of Linux, you can download it in Linux and keep it there. So these are the three primary operating systems in which people use the Katalon Studio. So once you click on download now, it downloads into your machine, and so there's nothing much as an installation as such. So it'll comes as a zip file. So just expand that. Once you expand it, you can place it wherever you have a space. So this is my workspace where I'm creating the stuff. I just did it a few weeks back. Okay, let me search. I think I should download it. So it comes like this, Katalon Studio, depending on the version that you have. The latest version is 5.4.2. So it's not 5.4.1, it's 5.4.2. So I have upgraded as well recently. One second, please. Okay, so I have kept it in the C drive tool space. After you kind of expand, unzip it, this is how it looks like. And it has its own configuration files. It's heavily depends on the Java JRE, so it has got its own JRE for running it and the different plugins that are available. So all you do is just click on this Katalon application. Since there's a lot of development happening and the new versions are getting released more frequently, so we need to keep an eye. Automatically it informs us. For example, if I had 5.4.1 previously, automatically you'll get an updated notification when you launch it, and you'll have an option to, you want to download it the latest 5.4.2 or maybe later. And if you first time when you log in, first time when you launch this tool, you will get the login window. So ideally what happens is, while downloading itself, when you click on download, you would have to sign up for an account. So if you have already created an account, then you can directly sign in. But if not, for the first time, you have to create an account, some valid email ID and a password. And an email comes to your email ID. You have to activate your link, and then you'll be allowed to download. The same user account you have to remember for the first time when you launch this tool. Again, they will validate whether you are the same person who is trying to log in or not. And that's called activation in my agenda. So like when I say activating your account, so typically what happens when you launch the tool, it'll again ask you to enter your username and password, the same credentials through which you have created the account. Once you do that, that's when all the features will be available for you, and you'll be able to start using it. So any questions on the first 2 points, basically from where I can download and install the studio and activating the Katalon Studio. So once you do it, it's pretty user friendly. There's nothing much to talk about. Just you'll go create an account, download it, and then put into one location, directly go to that folder path and double click on the Katalon Studio icon. Enter your username and password again, so it will get activated. So this is the by default window, and for the first time what happens, there will be a user guide also kickstart automatically, which is a simple 5 sets of screenshots which will navigate you through what you can do from the toolbar, how you can do from this test explorer, how you can create a web test project, how you can do a Appium mobile test project, how to maintain all your resources, etc. So just like a 5 screenshots, a quick user guide will be navigating you through a wizard. Only for the first time it will come. That's all. After that, you will see the similar screen from where we can actually start creating the web test or web services test or any other things. Any questions so far? Okay, so these are already recently created tests. Basically, you can actually launch from there, or you can straight away start creating a new test. Suppose I just want to create a new project. Just go ahead and say new project, and here is a name that you can give it, maybe like web test project 1, and you can change this location by default, which is pointing to the Katalon Studio. This is more like a workspace in which it's going to create all the temporary uh, information of your project. So you can change it to the location that you want, or you can just continue what it is there. Ideally, I would just like to create under C drive. We'll start pointing to it. So here I just want to create a new folder. Maybe I'll say workspace. So that's the folder which I'm going to use it from now. And you can have some description. Ideally, real-time scripts will definitely have what is this is all about and which project you're trying to automate, etc. You can have obviously the project name. Click OK. So you can see as I just created a new project, automatically it's helped me. These are some of the important things you would need in a typical web project. The other things, if I'm doing it on, let's say, Selenium Eclipse, it's totally my responsibility to maintain all these things. And some people maintains in a structured way, some people maintains it in a very unstructured way. So now this tool brings us everybody onto the same page. So you need to maintain your test cases here, your object repository information here, and the test suites collection of test cases, right? Obviously, once we automate, 100, 200 test cases, we're going to group them into a logical grouping, like maybe based on the functionality or features that we have automated, or maybe based on the sanity test or a smoke test, regression test, end-to-end test. So you will categorize into different suites. And here, all the test data files for validating your application, all the test data files that you're going to use, maybe in the form of Excel, maybe in the form of CSV, or it could be a existing database that you're going to point. So you're going to maintain all those files here. So you don't need to really maintain it in. So the problem that happens is like just now as you have seen. So different people will maintain it in different locations. Somebody will put all of these test data in a C drive. Somebody will put all this in a D drive and start referring to them, hard coding them in their code. And if you copy this script to some other machine, and if there is no D drive, automatically your script starts failing. Now with this, what happens, everybody is bound to maintain this kind of a structure, which is obviously a good structure, which is its own. If you wanted to do that in a Selenium or any other tool, you should yourself have to maintain something called a relative path architecture, and you have to maintain under the same project. Again, you will have to create a same structure to do that, and then again refer them in the code. So instead of do that, the tool helps you to maintain it. And here, if there are any checkpoints that we're going to create, again, checkpoints is a big miss in Selenium if you're doing it, but people who know qtp UFT can relate. So you can create checkpoints which will validate certain things based on your expected and actual, and if the test case or checkpoint values match, it will get passed, otherwise it will get fail. And you can see all the keywords that we're going to use it in the project. So all the keywords will be here. And if you know listeners from TestNG point of view in Selenium, so we work with something called TestNG listeners, so that listeners can be maintained here, and all the reports of this particular project can be maintained. And we'll see profiles is something different. So you can get to see a test explorer with a clear architecture, and this is very simple, very user friendly. If you have like 100 test cases or 1,000 object repository objects, and if you have like say some 100 200 keywords, all of them you can just search just by inputting the keyword here. So once we create the test, we'll come back and see how we can search and do that. And the search you can minimize only to the test cases search or test data search or keyword search. So you can minimize it if you know that it's a test case or anything specific. Otherwise, you can always keep it and all and search it. So that's more from the test explorer point of view. There are few settings which are very important. Just want to quickly spend some time. We're going to talk about each of these settings in detail as we go. But if you go to the section, the way I've landed here is project menu. Under the project, since it's a web project, so it's going to help me majorly the settings related to web. So go to project settings. This is just the project information that we have created while creating this project. And under the test design, you have these web locators. Okay, so again, any web application that you're going to typically work, let me just quickly show you. Any website that you open, suppose you have this text box here. You wanted to know what are the properties of this. We used to do this inspect element. And typically this inspect element will give us, it's an input box. So the HTML tag is input, and it has an ID property. ID is something that's unique to this. And it has area label property, a placeholder property, a name property, a value property, autocomplete, and what is the type? Type is a text box. So every locator, so we typically call it as whatever the application that you are going to work. So let's say this is your AUT application under test. I'll choose a different color. So this application under test will have different controls, right? Say text box, a list or a combo box, a radio button. By the way, we are going to discuss about each of these controls. How we are going to automate that? And let's say some checkbox, and let's say some maybe a multi-line text kind of thing where you can type your address. And let's say you have some links here, maybe a few links here, and then you have some buttons. So everything is called locator, and this is specifically known as text box. This is like a list box, a radio button, push button, sorry, checkbox, a push button, and these are the links. But everything is fundamentally called locator, and every locator will have certain information like this. Input, it's an input type text box. There will be some ID, there will be some name to it, and in case of a text box, if I enter a value and then try to inspect the element, the value comes into the value field. And whether it is a text box or radio button or push button, what is the type of it? Similarly, you can see certain information about a form. What is ID? What is the action it can perform, etc. So every web application, if you just do a right click, you'll see a HTML source code, and all these properties are maintained within the HTML source code. And this entire structure of this program is what we call it as DOM, document object model. So within the DOM architecture of your application, every control, you can see what are the unique properties of it, like not unique properties, all the properties. The button, what is its class type, what is its type, right? So that same information we are instructing to the Katalon studio here, how and what is a way to identify. Again, people who know Selenium can relate very easily that there are 8 different ways in which we have written the program to identify the locator. The first and foremost important one, which is generally comes unique, is the ID. So always ID is preferable. If you have an ID for your control, that's the best thing, because even if you automate your application in multiple languages, let's say today you're automating your application which is in English, but you have to run the same automation code on Chinese, Japanese, French, etc., then ID would be the best. Because if you pick up name or a text, the text is going to be different in different languages and it's going to be not unique. So if you have ID, like in this example that we just saw, it has an ID, which is this. So it's always better to pick up the ID and automate it, because ID is something that's not going to change, even if you switch the language. If ID is not there, then you look for something like name property or alt property. In case of a checkbox, whether it is checked or not. In case of a form, uh, the form property itself, href, placeholder, whether it is selected or not, the src property, title property, type property, text property, link text property. So if it is a link text will be generally used or text will be used. But in any other applications, mostly the ID, name. Some of these title can be for a page or a frame. Title is most probably used. So you can see all these are selected. So what does that mean is, depending on the type of the control that we're going to record, it's going to use these mechanisms to identify. If ID is there, it'll go pick up ID. No, ID is not there, then it'll look for name. If any one of these properties or more than one property, so the whole idea of any automation tool, not just Katalon, not just Selenium or UFT, how can we identify the locator in a unique way? So that's the challenge. So all the automation tools, or if you are writing the code manually, that's what we tried doing in Selenium. From the set of properties it has, we were trying to capture what is the property that will make it unique. And the unique property we used to maintain in the code. Anybody else was thinking of what is missing here? There were a couple of important things that we used to take care in Selenium or any other automation tools, especially web automation tools, because we're talking about web projects. You'd have heard about something called XPath and CSS, right? Anybody heard about this? So these will be still there, and we're going to use even XPath and CSS also while automating with Katalon Studio. So we'll see. Once we record, you will come to know how does typically, after we record few steps, right, we'll see how Katalon is identified those controls. Along with this information, we can even we can form an XPath. Again, XPath had two types: absolute XPath, relative XPath. Uh, Karishma, definitely we're going to discuss all this, but not on the first day, right? So as we go, we'll talk about the question is about question from her is like how do we write a custom keyword in Katalon? So we'll do that. So the same thing if you have to do it in the Selenium, it's totally you have to build the whole keyword driven framework and you have so we did all that. I mean, people who attended the training with me in Selenium, you know. So we created all those keywords. We have defined the functions for all of those keywords. It's a big work. But here, entire structure is there. The layout is there. It's just like a UI in which you go click on add and add a keyword and try to define it in the libraries. That's it. Okay, so we had something called an XPath. Again, if you remember, we had an absolute XPath and relative XPath. So we'll see all those as we record it. And apart from XPath, there is one more option called CSS. So the CSS locator, CSS way to identify is also. Okay. So this is more on how web locators gets identified. The next we have few settings related to while the test case is running, the default failure for handling your steps. Like you want to stop on the failure, continue on the failure, or you wanted to give something an optional message that you can do that. And external libraries. So most of the libraries that are required for automating your application, be it a Java list that is required, or be it let's say you're going to use some test data library file. So all the Apache related libraries, almost all the libraries that Catalan would take care of it from a Java point of view. On top of it, if you want to still add any libraries, especially when you just click on add, you'll only see the jar file here. So any jar file which is used, which is going to be used in your project, because if you're referring to that library file and writing the code, that should be available, right? So that external libraries can be put over here. And email, so we can configure this email so that the end of the execution, you wanted this report also comes as an email. So you can specify the Gmail account or your own Exchange server account and what's the username, the port number, the password, and typically the protocol type. We'll see all these settings and we'll see how email gets triggered and everything. And you wanted to encrypt it so that only the people has this decryption mechanism can read it, and who are the recipients, what you want to CC, what you want to PCC, and the typical template. What is a template that's going to be? This is how you can see an email, on which server it has been run, what is operating system it has been executed, and browser name. We did all these by writing the code. Like in UFT, I did it. In case of Selenium Java, we did it. So to write this code alone, you have to spend at least 15, 20 lines of code minimum to minimum. Even though they're all available in the form of library files, just referring to those library files, bringing it to the structure, at least 20, 25 lines of code you have to, and attaching your result file, right? So you don't need to do all that, just a setting. Come over here, give all the required settings of your Exchange server, give the recipient's information, it will start sending in the HTML file or CSV file or PDF file, etc. So we'll talk about each of these settings in detail as we talk about. Okay. So default execution on which browser? So since Katalon can work with multiple browsers, like as you can see in the list, Firefox, IE, Safari, Edge. So which one is by default in case if you don't specify anything? While executing the test also, you can choose which test you want to run, but in case if you've not chosen anything, how you're going to run it. It uses Selenium libraries. No. What I'm saying is, I'm not getting the question fully. What you mentioned just now. It uses Selenium libraries, so Firefox. Okay, anyway, these are the different libraries, different browsers on which it can execute. So if you have not mentioned anything, then you can choose what you want default. For some of you, maybe Safari, some of you, maybe Edge. So depending on, you can choose what you want. So then comes the default waiting time. Right? You remember the implicit wait that we used to write in Selenium, or in UFT, if you know, there was a default time of 60 seconds for the web projects. So here we have default 30. So if you want, you can increase it. And this is a good practice post execution. If you want to open the report automatically, you can open. Terminate the drivers. Not a good idea for every test case, but in case if you want, like, what is a driver is, typically we create a web driver object, and we'll start using the driver object to launch your website and to perform the operations on the different locators. So if you want these options to be enabled, open a report by end of the execution. Or if you want to terminate the driver after every test case, not a very good idea, but for suit, it's okay. So that you can choose it. And then we're going to look at anyway this JIRA integration towards the end. Qtest, which is a test case management tool. Katalon analytics. So they have also built an analytics in the recently. So we can talk about that. And here is a report. This feature straight away they kind of leveraged it from UFT. So in qtp or UFT, we had this nice feature. What is advantages of this feature is mostly our scripts will be run in the night time, and in the night time, so there we generally expected to have an extensive logging for all the test steps that we are going to do. For every single step, we need to have an extensive logging mechanism so that we know what happens, right? In case your test fails. But since you're not at home, since you're not in the office, you're actually automatically running it, scheduled run. And let's say the script got stopped in between, or paused in between, or closed in between. So let's say the script ran for almost 1 hour and then terminated. Now we don't know the reasons for what are the terminations unless you really have logging for every single step. Even if you have logging for every single step, there were many occasions or many situations where it did not capture that last step where it was terminated. So it was always like not very clear why the test was terminated, in spite of spending completely going through the log. So there are two cases. Again, you have to rerun the test. And when you rerun the test again, there is no guarantee that the same issue will come or not come. But again, when you run it from the scheduler overnight, again, sometimes it's failed. So it was always a confusion what was happening. So what you can do, you can enable the video recorder. So what it does is, while the execution is going on, it will take a video of that. So now anyway, the video file will be available for you. So if something goes wrong and gets terminated, you don't need to run the same test and end up not getting repro. You can simply watch this video, which will try to do every single action that you're performing on the website. Sorry, is recorded, and you can watch that video. Then you'll get a picture of what happened. So it's a very nice feature. We will start using it as we go. And again, part of your application, I've explained in the orientation. So this is what we generally try to do for any project, especially in the sprint agile model. Initially, you may be having only DB ready. So still you need to do DB testing. And after that, you may have only web service available. So you need to do web service testing. And then when the complete UI is available, that's when you do the full web test. So all these three requirements that are needed for us, we have. So here are the web settings where we are going to do settings for your MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, and then you'll try to perform database testing. And web services, anyway, we're going to I'll kind of show you where you're going to enter the web service URL and provide the required signature and then hit on it and see what is the response that's going to come. Web, anyway, we are discussing how we automate that. So these are some of the settings related to database, and these are some of the basic settings related to network. So this is the main settings page. Depending on the type of the project that you're working, you'll actually choose what you need. So any questions on these settings? It's a quick walkthrough. We're going to spend each one and understand in detail, but most of the time they have set it to the default, what is really required in today's industry. Let's say previously the web applications used to be a bit slow. The expected time was 60 seconds, but now we have most of the web applications are responsive within 30 seconds. So we have 30 seconds time. Katalon analytics is basically you can analyze the, let's say after you run 20, 30 times, you can apply these analytics to see how the trend of execution is. So we were about to build this on our own in our own test tools, but like this is a nice feature. So because today's world is all about data and analyzing the data, right? That will give you a kind of a mechanism which are all the most important test cases that was actually time consuming or highly important for our future runs, all that. What is mean by 30 seconds, but how I'm seeing here? Here, in a way, let's say you click on a link and that link takes us to the next page. So on an average time, that web response is like less than or equal to 30 seconds. But you may have some older applications and the response is beyond 30 seconds. You can simply come and change it over here. Okay, this is like implicit wait, if you know that discussed in Selenium, or I mean what I'm actually saying right now. So we don't need to refer back to Selenium as a concept, but what I'm actually saying right now. You click on a link and you need to make your test to wait for 30 seconds because it takes 30 seconds to get to the next page. If you don't have this 30 seconds and if your script is going immediately to the next line, then it immediately won't find the required object and your test will fail. All right, so let's create one simple test and see how does it records or what are the mechanisms to record. So, okay, before that, we just created only the project. So let's create one folder. Okay, let's select this test cases and create a folder. Let's say any application for that matter. I'll just say like slide share test. So you can create your own main name that what you want to give it for your test cases. Under this, I want to create another folder, maybe like a smoke test. Okay. And within the smoke test, now I want to create the actual test. That is a test case. So I already had the test case folder. Within the test case, if you want to create categorization, or if you wanted to maintain some folder structure within that, again, just select the test cases, click on new folder. So like this, you can go up, create up to any level. So in the smoke test, I'm just saying a new test case. Let's say this is something related to a valid login test. I don't know, I don't have a valid account. I'll just say login validation. Okay, and you can have a proper description. This test is to validate the login form of slide share application. Very important is a tag. This tag, suppose you have, let's say, you will eventually, if you have a complex project, you will have 1,000 test cases also. And if you wanted to group them with some, if you wanted to tag them so that you can search will be very easy and you can identify them very easily, you can put some tag name to it, right? So all the test cases that are related to the login, I'm going to tag them as login. All the test cases that are related to some maybe registration, I'll tag them as a registration, or things related to upload, I'll tag it as upload, download as download. So you can just tag some unique keyword so that your search will be very easy when you're looking for that. So as soon as we just create the test, you can see kind of an editor is kind of open, which has two options for us. One is the script format, manual format, all the variables that are related to the project, we can maintain it here. And any integration with respect to the JIRA test case or test cases, JIRA issues or defects, and the basic properties of this project. The structure of the editor is almost like Eclipse. So if anybody worked on, again, Java Eclipse or Selenium, so you can relate it like how we are generally going to create this project information. So one way to do that is if you're comfortable with scripting, which will be eventually, that's the idea. By end of the sessions, you all will be able to write manually on your own. Even though that's not the idea behind the tool, because the tool, we can save the time by recording it, but maybe to get through interviews, to even say that, I'm comfortable in writing the code as well. The whole idea is by end of the sessions, we will be able to expert in this area. But to save the time, or if you don't want to really go to every single object, look at what is the information it has, then writing the code on your own, definitely the record and playback is something that's going to be most useful. And why UFT was so popular, again, for the same reasons. And why people had to spend a good amount of learning in Selenium, for the same reason that up to IDE, Selenium IDE, we had the record and playback, and you can copy that code and bring it into the Eclipse IDE and make the changes. Again, you're done. So recording and playback plays major role in the beginning of learning the tool or in the beginning of developing the scripts. So let's go and click on this record web. So here you can specify your application. So typically, as I told you, this is the application. I'm just going to start recording on it. So I'll give the URL here, the same URL which I'm going to use it. I'll give that URL here. And here are the options of the different browsers in which you want to start. Do you want to start on a Firefox or a Chrome or an IE? And the first time when you're especially doing it, the active browsers for the recording as of now, we have it on the Chrome. So just select this active browser Chrome. So this first time would, if you're doing it for the very first time, you need to install this recorder. It's called Katalon Automation Recorder. Again, if you know Selenium IDE, quite similar to that. The KMS technology company has developed this recorder called Katalon Automation Recorder. That is the core base behind recording the test. Okay, so let's install. Remember, the first time what you have to do is the quick steps again. You come over here, you say, sorry, we'll talk about Spy Web and Spy Mobile later. We'll say record web. It brings us to this web recorder screen. Here you need to give the URL of your application. Right now there are no actions being recorded, and here is the browsers list. Choose active browsers, which is by default Chrome right now, and that's when for the first time you'll get this option to install the extension. So click on install extension. So since on my computer the default browser is Edge, so you can see this this is opened in Edge, but this is not a plugin to install it on Edge. Okay, so you can close this Edge. I just copied that URL which has come. I can actually stop it for now. I can stop it for now. Since it's the first time, we have to install this plugin. So I'm going to Chrome, and in the Chrome, I'll paste that URL. Okay, we'll even close this. I got some URL when I say install that Katalon to automation recorder. That URL, I'm just copying it in the Chrome because it's for the Chrome browser alone. And then you would see an option, Katalon recorder, which is like Selenium IDE for Chrome. Remember the Selenium IDE that anybody uses Selenium IDE for Firefox? And in the last couple of months, almost a year, it broke as well. It's not working with the latest browsers of the Firefox. So something similar, it's done by the Katalon Studio called Katalon Recorder, and this is exclusively for Chrome. So you open your Chrome browser, put that URL and say, you'll come over here and click on add to Chrome. So it just says added to Chrome. So that means we are, you can see here is the automation recorder. If it is already added, you will get added to Chrome. If not, you will have add to Chrome option. If you want to spend a few minutes on this, we can do that. Just click on this icon, Katalon automation recorder, and you will get this independent or individual recorder screen. You don't need to work with Katalon Studio to work with this recorder. You can work independently also. If you wanted to work independently, all you can do is just click on the record button here, and you give the URL that you wanted to. Suppose I want to click on this login. Just want to ensure whether it is recording the steps or not. So you can see it's opened the website when I gave the URL and I clicked on the login. So it's performed a command called click, and it's identified that login. Like previously when I did a spy on that particular, we can start calling spy, because spy was a terminology from UFT. And Selenium, all you do is a right click and try to find out, inspect the element. So now again in Katalon, they started calling it as spy. So it's okay to call spy. So when we spy, we saw the properties like ID, name, text, etc. From that properties, this recorder has picked up the unique one, which is ID. So if you go to this, and I'm in Firefox right now, so don't get confused. When I do a right click and say inspect element, so it has ID property called login. So that is what it is captured here. Okay, let's continue. Again, if I do anything on other browsers, it will not record. Only when I do it on Chrome, it will record. So I'm entering, let's say, some username, and you can see I entered the value. So this is a not needed step. So it's an extra step. Without this also we can continue. So it entered some value, and I want to enter something. This is not a valid password, so but I'm entering some password, and here is a checkbox. I'm just unselecting it. So you can see some notification is also coming there when I do all this. And when I click on login, you can see one notification has come, and it was showing me how it was identified. So this is a script which is generated. The same script is going to come to Katalon Studio when we start the navigation of record from the studio. So I'll just stop it now and then try to understand this code as such. So first is basically the command which was performed is open. Since it's a web recorder, open is good enough. It's not open browser. And here is the URL. And then there was a click operation performed on whose ID was login. And then on the user ID text box also I clicked it, so this step came, but you can actually delete this. It's not really required. So if you have any unnecessary steps recorded extra, you can delete it. Then I have the same username text box. I've typed the username here. Then I have, okay, so it's taking an extra step. That's okay. If it is not going to play back, we'll come back and add that step. So again, when I click on password, it's taken password, and I typed some password here. Okay, so in Katalon Studio, we can encrypt this value, and we can put the encrypted value so that people won't read and all that. And you can just click on that remember checkbox. So there was a checkbox. I clicked on it, and this is the XPath. I was talking about the XPath. For this particular button, the last step when we are trying to perform the login one, this does not have any unique properties basically. Since it does not have unique properties, so it has to, like, it has just a span, class name, and there's no unique property as such. So that's why it is writing the XPath for that. So in our upcoming sessions, we'll spend time in understanding what is XPath, how to write XPath. So you'll identify the nearest unique one. The nearest unique one was a button. So it is taking its properties called button, and after the button, we have a span control. So that is what is this. So that's how it is writing the XPath. If you want to just play back alone this, you can simply click on play, which will try to perform the same operations on the application. So as you can see, let me close all these things. The same thing has been performed. I'll just put it in some other website maybe just for, okay. So here is a test case, and you can simply, you can name it also if you wanted to rename it something like slide share login test. So you can name it properly. Again, you can create all the test cases, put them into a suite. On the bottom, it will tell you information like how many steps passed, failed, etc. Again, the analytics which we are talking about. So just click on play. So you can see it browse to this website, and it performed all those steps. The same thing will be used by Katalon Studio when you start recording onto it. So I'm not going to spend much time. Maybe in the next when we start the actual sessions, I'll spend one more session on this recorder, because ultimately, if you want to get master in how these controls identified, what are the different operations that you can perform, and how to write XPath CSS, it is ideal to spend on this particular tool, spend some time on this tool. And also initially, whatever the code that is going to generate, we can export, and we can actually convert into any of these format like C#, Java, Ruby, Python, Katalon Studio, basically the Groovy format, or Robot framework, which all these are almost open source tools. So you can convert into any of these formats and start using it. Maybe you want to take this code from here and use it in Selenium Eclipse that you have already developed some script, you can do that. Or you have Katalon script coming up, so you wanted to manually start writing there, you can do that. So we're going to spend another one day discussing more about this recorder. Okay, so any questions on the tool as such at high level? See, you can do a data driven directly from here itself. What is breakup of classes? Where do you see that? I mean, it's basically the page object model. Okay. So what we're going to do is, let's say you have your web application. Let me ask this question. Do you know page object model? You heard about it by chance? Yeah, I'm talking about that. So breaking up your uh, package into multiple classes and each class for each web page in your application. And then maintaining all the locators information and the methods, operations which you're going to perform into each class. Let's say this is for login class and this is for home page class. This is for users class. So that's what is meant by breaking up classes or maintaining a separate class for every web page. So the maintenance, when tomorrow if something gets changed or if I have to change a method, so it's easy to do that in page object model. All right, so this is more of Katalon automation recorder. Yes, I'll just show you once we record in the Katalon studio, it'll automatically comes in page object model. I'll just show you that. Okay. So let's let's reinitiate this. Now that you understood what is actual tool which is going to be used in behind, so we can easily create a test. So and say continue recording. Now the extension is already there. I can say don't show this dialog again because I already have an extension, or I can simply politely accept that in case if somebody does not have it, we can do it and just continue recording. So now you can see, so it's opened over here, or you can actually just the Chrome is opened. So you can start typing over here and you can see as you move to different locators, you can see a red border coming up. So that's under the highlight. Basically that's the step which is going to perform. So I clicked on login, and the way the Katalon recorder previously you have seen the two steps performed, right? But there you had something like just click, but here more precisely the action or keyword that is used is a left click, because I did a left click on that. The first step is a navigate, second step is a left click, and you can see again it's showing in red color. That means this is under highlight, and as I'm typing you can see a keyword being applied called set text. Action data was like Shankar, and the element is input user login. And the same thing which I'm going to do for password. Can you see what's happening now for the password? It's automatically encrypting and just showing us the stars so that the people can't see what's your password. And I'm unchecking, basically just unselecting this checkbox. So again, I left click on this checkbox and I click on this login button. So we have seen the properties. It was just a span control. So it has taken something called span underscore login as the element name. Okay, so we did all the required operations. So you want to pause it for few minutes and you want to think what to do next, you can do pause, or you wanted to stop completely recording, you can do it. Now these are the steps which have generated. If you wanted to delete any steps which are not necessary, you can do delete, or you think some step is missing, you can add it over here, basic action or some validation or some synchronization point. So we'll see all this as we move. So here are the steps which are generated. Just click on OK. Now the core objects while we're recording, the core locators information while we were recording has been captured. And you can see, Karishma, I was just talking about the page object, right? So you can see they have been categorized into the page. All the login information of the page created under one folder called page underscore login, and all the controls, all attributes of that See, in a way, I mean, I really like this tool in one way because uh, uh, all the pain that every individual is going through in creating the structure, creating the framework, they have really considered all of that and created as a simple way to do that. So that's the biggest advantage. So then there's one more login page in the first page, right? The home page. So we just clicked on one link and that's in one page, and all the login page information is in this page. So by default it's here. So let's try to click on. Okay, ideally I should be able to create a folder. Okay, fine. So now you can see they all automatically added to this object repository folder we had. Otherwise, what happens, if I have an option to save that object repository, somebody will save it in C drive where they have space, somebody will save it in D drive where they have space. So messing up the code starts from there. So they are not giving any chance for the individual user and they are directly saving it here. So which is part of your test. So wherever you carry this test, automatically this object's information also will come. And if you just click into one of these, you can see, right click on this and see properties. Okay, it's just not showing much information here. Let's click here. This is the properties. Okay. Now ideally it will show what properties it has. Okay, let me just select one of these link. Interesting. Let me go to only objects. Okay. Ideally, what it will do is it will remember the settings that we have taken there, which will show what properties that it can use to capture it. So we can see what properties it has used to capture it also. We'll discuss in the next. Ideally, it should show me what properties it's captured also. Okay. Look at this script. This is a manual way. How do you validate it? Yeah, I'll do all that. So probably I can do one thing. I can add now itself since that you are looking. Okay, so open browser and then we are clicking on this. After clicking on this, I again navigated on. This is not required. Okay, we open the browser empty. Okay, let's say after navigating, you want to add a validation step. After this, you can add um, web UI keyword, and you will have different things like I can verify whether I'm in the right page or not by maybe getting the URL. So if you go back and see what happens in the script is, you can see it's actually getting that URL. So in a way, if you familiar with a little bit of coding, it's first open the browser. It's clicked on the link, login link. Ideally, I'm thinking this is not really required, but let's remove it to the next step. And I want to capture the URL of the page after it navigated here, whether I'm in the right page or not. I'm just capturing that, and then I will click on the login text box and I will enter this value. Okay, so here also we can encrypt it. Definitely we can do that. Encrypt text. So we can do encrypt text and put it over here. So don't worry for that now. And then we have a checkbox we selected, and then there is a login button. We clicked on it, and finally close the browser. If manually you're writing, there are many people who generally don't close this browser as a good practice, but they're ensuring you're closing the browser at the last, right? Okay, so little bit of programming where it comes. For example, if you see here, this is going to return a string just by getting the URL, it's not going to help. So what I should do, I should take into same like Java coding. If you know a bit of a Java coding, you can take into some variable string, maybe I'll say application URL equal to, I'll just do this. And what's the point if I take only into a string and without displaying it? From Java, I know syso, system.out.println, but in Groovy, it's just the println, or in Katalon Studio, it's just the println. So I mean, anything you're familiar, Java or Groovy, that is fine. Select it. You can see it's automatically converting println, and all I'm going to do is print this URL. Probably in the next example, Karishma, I can do full coding where we can write a simple if condition, and you can compare your expected URL with actual URL, and if it is matching, you're in the right page. Otherwise, you're not in the right page. So you can do this kind of basic editing for your code, and you can see if you actually do it from here, it's a simple method call statement to this method. That's all. And get URL, we are out. So these are the output variables. We are outputting to a variable called app URL. Okay, so if you want to play back, all you have to do is just look at here. These are all the different browsers on which you want to play back. Do you want to play back on Chrome, Firefox, IE? Where do you want to play back? Default is Firefox. Even though we recorded on Chrome, I can execute on Chrome or I can execute on Firefox. First, let me just show you on Firefox. So you can see over here. Yeah, let it fail. If it is going to fail, then we'll analyze it properly. It's more like Groovy language, Ahmed. But if you're comfortable in Java, that's good enough. You don't need to spend separate learning on Groovy. So it could not find a locator. That's why, okay, it's waited for 30 seconds and it could not find it. So the set text is failed basically. So in a way, I can definitely see this. I'll move this up. First is open browser, then navigate to this URL, then click on the login. Then even I need to move this also up. Then click on the login. Okay, this also I need to move up. Click on the login, then enter the text, enter the password, then remember. So let me just play back now. Is it completed? Good, completed. So each one is going to take like 30 seconds of maximum time, right? Ideally, I should wait to fail it completely and then start editing the test. Okay, let me rerun it now. Or let me do it in Chrome. The previous execution I have terminated, so I mean, it's very simple. If you have all the steps correctly, right? I did it, so you can see it's executed on the Chrome, all the steps. And once all the steps are over, you can see each of the step, how much time it has been taken. Overall time you will get, as well as every single step. Previously, these steps were not in correct order, so I just adjusted them. And you can also see from console. Console is the complete output, like an Eclipse. You can see we are printing that URL, right? So we have this print statement, print application URL. So here is the output from that. How long is class? Okay, that's it. We are done actually. In another 2 minutes, we're going to wind up. Okay, so this is kind of the output you can see from here. So a lot more things we're going to do it on. How do we edit this test? How do we modify for our need, etc. Cool. So this is pretty much, I touched upon few of the things. Yeah, ideally you will be mastered by end of the execution on scripting mode, even though that's not the idea from the Katalon team, but we are going to eventually be master there. Just learning only the manual mode will not help. We need to learn on the scripting mode as well. And if you know any one programming language, that's good enough. If you don't know, we can start from here. All right. So yeah, just wait us for a day. We'll communicate back with the exact date we're going to start. But again, we're not looking at long. So just like mostly by 3-4 days from now, that's like Monday, we're going to start. But anyway, the team will come back to you with the exact date and time. Time is going to be pretty much same, just the date. All right. So with this, I want to pass it here. Looking forward for day 3, which is the actual sessions, where we're going to spend a good amount of time in learning all these features which I've just talked about it. And yeah, any questions before we wind it up for today? Cool. Thanks everyone for attending the session. Talk to you soon. Okay, so Joshna, yeah, I looked at it. I'll reply back because I need some more information on that. I'll reply back to you that email. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.